Hello, everyone. So welcome back to the main room of Zing 2021 conference collocated with ECBS. I hope the ECBS crew is also with us because this is not so computer oriented, but it's a very interesting topic for all of us and for consumers. We're about to start the panel session. The title of the panel is Digitizing Consumers, Dangers of Social Media, Fake News and Censorship. Can we now go back? So very actual topic. Tom and his team are going to have a very hard time putting it under 1 hour in discussion, I assume. So please welcome Dr. Tom Wilson, Ana Brzakovic, Professor Nir Ksetri, Jelena Kanjuk, and Julie Ricard for our panel session. And I will hand out the word to Dr. Tom Wilson, who is going to introduce his fellow panelists and also to give us an insight into this topic. So I wish you a productive panel, and please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for the nice introduction. This is a very interesting topic and a very prestigious group of people we have today to talk about it. I would first like to thank the conference organizers and all of the technical people involved for really excellent organization and for ensuring that everything runs so smoothly, especially in a virtual setting, which I know is an additional level of challenge compared to a usual conference. So thank you for that. My name is Tom Wilson, and I'm the moderator for this session. I work for a UK-based business, which is called Concured. It's a small company, a technology company that's built a software platform that brands use to understand what topics their target audiences are interested in so that they can write better blog posts, articles, and white papers that more people will read and ultimately benefit from. I'm going to start by explaining why I think this is such an important and timely topic for us to be discussing today. And then I'm going to invite each of the 4 panelists to explain in an opening statement why they find it important, as well as to give us some background on themselves if they feel it's relevant to the discussion. So it seems almost every day I see a headline when I open my news about one of the big tech companies being fined or blamed or taken to court for some kind of infringement of privacy or for some controversy related to censorship or something else like this. And it's very easy to point the finger at these big names that we all know and love to hate at the same time. These are the ones we engage with on a daily basis. But in fact, there's a whole industry of data aggregators and brokers behind the scenes. And behind this, further, there are organizations that are paying to show their digital advertising to us as the consumers. And we decide what to click on or which platforms to participate in, which social media to consume, etc. So it's not, there are a lot of different actors in this, and we have to be careful not just to blame the ones that we know as household names. And it's not just what we're doing on the World Wide Web, it's also those apps on our phones, collecting and sharing our data as we use one app. And I'm happy to say that in the last few months, both Apple and with the iOS operating system on phones, as well as Android 12, will be providing more tools to make it explicit to the end user just how much we are giving away when we are using those apps that are in many cases costing us nothing on the surface in terms of money. So how did we get here? Well, in many economies, a number of web-based technologies were developed primarily to support the ad-based economy. Back in the early days of the internet as it was being used by consumers, so we're talking the late 90s, early 2000s, it was sufficient for many companies new companies like tech startups to build a large audience with whatever app or whatever service they were providing online. And it was all about building your user base and then figuring out how to monetize it. And the easy option, or let's say the option that many of them chose to go for, was to turn on advertising once you had a big enough group with a certain interest profile or combination of interest profiles that could be harvested and sold to advertisers. However, it turns out that the other side of this is that those rich user profiles that are being built up in the background are generated from demographic, geographic, psychographic, and behavioral data that we as the consumers put into those services that we use. Now, that's all very well if it just relates to targeted advertising, but the data that's gathered also has other applications which can be used by non-advertisers in order to understand more about us and maybe be used in pernicious ways or ways that we would prefer not to be used for, or ways that we are not even aware that it's being used for. So that might include things like credit scoring, personalized pricing. You pay a different price from what I pay because I'm in a certain country, or I have apparently a bigger interest in a certain thing that we're both looking at. Or targeting of news feeds that could be in a positive or a negative way, depending on what your political motivation is. So some negative consequences that come out of this, we're going to certainly talk about some of the obvious ones being filter bubbles, fake news, and manipulating opinion. But now there's a sense that this may have gone too far. And according to a study, recent study by the Pew Research Center, 72% of people polled feel that almost all of what they do online is being tracked by advertisers, technology firms, or other companies. And 81% say that the potential risks they face because of data collection outweigh the benefits. So with that as my opening statement, I will tell you what the structure of the session today is going to be. As I mentioned before, I'm going to invite each of the 4 panelists to give an opening statement. Then we have 5 big questions that we're going to discuss together. And if we have time remaining, we would love to have questions from the audience. So do please put them in the chat if there is that functionality on this platform. Or if not, please do write it down and make sure that you're ready to pose your question when we open it up to questions after the main panel session is finished. So with that, I would like to invite, just going from left to right in this panel, I would like to invite Anna to give her opening statement, please.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Tom, for the nice introduction to the topic. My name is Anna. I am from Serbia, even though it says USA here, but I lived in the USA for 2 years, so that counts. I work in marketing and communications area. I worked for one of the biggest Serbian companies for 5 years and was their communications director. The company is called Delta Holding. Then I worked for American Councils for International Education as a social media marketing strategist and their consultant. And now I am an entrepreneur having my own marketing agency, and I work with clients mostly from Western Europe, but some are domestic as well. So that's kind of my background and why I can also give some perspective on the topic that we are talking about today. I also agree that this is a very important thing to discuss, and I believe that everyone should know what platforms are using the data about us for. We should all be aware of that. However, I'm more for I do like that we have different algorithms, and that those platforms have algorithms that are giving us suggestions and ads and things that we would like based on what we like and how we interact with different things online. So I believe that if we turn off that option, we would be, getting a lot of information that we don't care about or we don't need. So I do look at the bright side and good side of those algorithms and of those platforms learning about us. However, I do believe that we need to know what they are what do they know about us, and to be aware of what information they're taking for what. There was an interesting quote in the Social Dilemma movie that probably most of you have watched, and it says that if you aren't paying for the product, realize that you are the product. So that's very interesting and a bit scary, but I think if we know what's going on and if we allow what we share, I think that it can be actually useful. And I do believe that technology is not good or bad per se. I believe that it is the way how we use it determines whether it's going to be good or bad.
Thank you very much, Anna. Let's keep going from left to right. Nir, if you would be kind enough now.
Thank you very much, Tom. Yeah, my name is Nir Chetri. I'm a professor at University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and I have been researching this area, internet and social media and e-commerce, all these things for more than 20 years. And so internet is pretty much this is a main part of everyday life. And just to give you some idea, in 2008, for example, the internet overtook newspaper as the source of news in the US, and in 2010, internet overtook TV, which is the internet is the main source of information, not anymore TV from 2010. And if you look at that in 2018, social media already overtook print newspaper as a source of news in the US. So the idea here is that social media is the main channel of news for consumers in the US. And if we look at the global trend worldwide, there are currently more than 4 billion users of social media, and Facebook is the biggest social media website. And as the previous speaker pointed out, if you are not paying for whatever you are getting, you are the product. And actually, Facebook makes, in the US and Canada, North America, Facebook makes $62, more than $62. This is a little old figure, actually, 2016. $62 per user in US and Canada. Maybe that increased to $100. How exactly they make that money? And so the thing currently is that the laws, regulations, and policies, ethical codes of conduct, they have not been developed very well. So in a lot of time, they might be doing illegal things, breaking law, paying a little bit fine, $2 million, even $1 billion sometimes, and that is nothing for them. And so this is the thing going on, monetizing customers, making money from the users. And that is one thing. Also, in response to that, the regulators are kind of taking actions. New laws are coming all over the world, including the GDPR in the European Union countries, and US has the California state has the Consumer Protection Act, California Consumer Protection Act, and recently, actually, in the 2021 this year, they also have even more strict law in California, California Privacy Rights Act. 56% is Californian supported that, and CPRA. And CPRA is kind of very strict. It has given right to correct inaccurate information. To the companies have to correct that, and also there is the data minimization, purpose limitation, right to receive notice if they are using kind of the information, consumers' information. And so in the US, there is a trend. The state of Virginia also enacted new law, and Nevada and Vermont and all those. And I think that is the trend all over the world, and consumers are also taking action. So I think it is getting a little longer, and I'll maybe cover these things later after getting introduction from the rest of the panelists probably.
Thank you, Nir. Yelena, what would you like to say as your opening statement?
Thank you, Tom. Hi, Anna, Nir, and all the audience out there. I really miss those live events, I have to say, but it's quite good. My name is Jelena Kanjuh. I'm from Serbia also. I'm from the field of communication and business strategy and technology. My purpose here is to share my experience that I gather for the last, let's say, 10, 12 years of working with different kind of companies, from large one to startups in the field of communication, And since I'm very familiar with data, I also did my PhD research in Moscow. I spent there for 6-7 years. I have different perspective on data and how data is used actually in reality and in business way. So there is the technology aspect of that, and there is a business one and the reality. And I would like to share all those information with you in the minutes after. The main topic from my side and the very interesting part is that fake news is not something new. We will also speak about the history of fake news. And I would also like to share with you that we are living in time where we are in kind of a bubbles. But is it true? Is it not true? Are we aware of all missing information or not? So this is a very important topic for new age and also for universities. I would like to mention that because there is a large part of educational programs that should be developed in this sense. We will discuss about that in further topics. So we can continue. Thanks.
Thank you, Jelena. And now, last but absolutely not least, Julie, it's time for your opening statement, please.
Thank you, Tom. Hi, everyone, and thanks again for the invitation. So I'm currently a Tech and Society Fellow with the Mozilla Foundation. I'm from Brazil, and I'm living in Mexico, even though it also says US under my picture. My academic background is in international relations, and I've been working in the field of data and tech towards social good and sustainable development for a few years now. And my work revolves around the social and political implications of technology and thinking through how we can leverage this omnipresent data that we've mentioned already, the tech, which is done very successfully by the private sector, for the public interest and, for example, for supporting civil society's advocacy and work. And I find it particularly interesting and important to consider this new ecosystem, right, that is generated around it by technology. So in other words, what does big tech, social media means in terms of transforming power relations, in terms of the social consequences that it brings about, how it mediates our interaction with information, with politics. And as a result of this work, I'm currently developing and actually fundraising for a social media network that aims to promote Eureka moments through meaningful content and conversation around books and movies. You can, I'm sharing the link in the chat if you want to take a look. It's an MVP that can be accessed through that link. And basically, what I want to emphasize here is that through our reflection is, through a different type of sustainability model, can we challenge some of the core premises of big tech that I'm sure we're going to discuss further in the discussion, right? But for example, instead of being driven by data exploitative monetization practices with the goal to maximize profits, we are a non-for-profit, and really our core goal is to foster meaningful interactions, right? We want to generate empathy, increase knowledge, foster critical thinking, and ultimately civic engagement. So very specific goals that are not necessarily the same goals as the big incumbent social media, right? And the premise that we work upon is something that has been mentioned by my colleagues, and I feel it's important to consider and further discuss in the conversation I had, is that what we call the online public sphere, which is also known as a social media platform, has become an inevitable space for civic engagement. And it is going to be, as Nir mentioned, a primary source of information, right? Almost half of the internet users use social media for news updates. That being said, only 40% of those actually think that social media is the most trustworthy source for information. So of course, this leads us to some of the discussion around the consequences of social media and misinformation that we're going to touch upon. So I'll stop here for now.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Julie. So now we come to the first big question, which is what are the technologies? And I understand from the diversity of our panel that some people will be maybe more on the let's say, the side of using the tools, working with PR or advertising. So it would be lovely to hear from your sides how you feel about that, as well as from anybody on the more technical side. And if we don't have so much here, I'm happy to fill in that gap. So let's start perhaps from a practitioner's point of view. Would either perhaps Anna or Jelena like to tell us about some of the technologies involved, like SEO, cookies, interest profiles?
I can jump in. So from my experience, actually, I mentioned that I work with different companies, large and small ones. There is a really big gap between the stage of development of technology and the usage rate, in a sense that you will not believe, but in lots of companies, people don't know how to use the data to target their audience, because lots of changes are out there. I mean, many algorithms are changing, and people are using CRMs, for example, and they collect lots of data, but they don't know what to do with them. So we have really big gap between educated the employees who are using those systems on those positions. And yes, the question is, I mean, if they're employed on those positions, you assume that they know how to do it. But it's not just that. It's really complicated for someone from marketing to learn how to use some system that is based on algorithms and data, because it's developed by, engineers. So you have to mix that. We are speaking about multi-potentials that have to receive all that knowledge. So in practice, there is a gap, and it's not true that everything actually is targeted properly. And you will see lots of ads that are actually does not connect with you at all. So there is one part of targeting. And regarding SEO, it's a trend today. So if you want to be visible, you need to implement SEO strategy. But today, everything is based on private blog networks and link building strategies. And people forgot about their own channels, like your websites, your social media channels, and they focus on link building. They missing the point, because there is lots of content out there, and all that link building blogs that are creating are not, they don't have a value. When you're searching something and search for how to do something, you will get the result like top 10 ways to, according to our research. There is no research. So those data, they're presented to you as a result are not actually valuable information. And it's a kind of a fake news, but it's not a fake news. It's, people are just doing their job because they need to put lots of keywords and phrases so they can actually pop up on the Google results. And it means that we are living in lots of trash of information that are not valuable for us. That's why actually I'm fan of targeted advertisement, because I can buy something that I'm looking for, and I adore those smart systems that actually recognize my needs. And I hope that all the other people are in that way. They think like that. So maybe Anna can continue. I'm sure she has to add something.
Yeah, I mean, I can partially agree with you that, in Serbia, many companies, the law here isn't very for like that data protection. We have that, and companies started implementing that, but I'm not sure how, if somebody is really checking on like what's going on. But it is true that like, especially the big companies, the international ones, they take it seriously, and we have the like cookies consent, we have the GDPR when you're registering and entering the email list, for example. So that's being done. However, I also see on social media that many companies are targeting wrong people, or they're targeting you even after you've bought that product, but they're targeting you with the same product. So I see that many companies are kind of wasting their money or spending more than they need because they, exactly as Jelena said, their teams do not think of and do not have all the analytics there, or don't track everything everything as they are supposed to. So that's what I'm seeing from the companies here.
Thank you. Now I'd like to invite either Nir or Julie to tell us more about perhaps the engagement side of things and how engagement is being used to in the background. Or Nir, perhaps from your side, more on some of the technical and engineering aspects. So perhaps we'll start with Julie and then move on.
Yes, thank you, Tom. So a few things, reactions and maybe a few provocations also to what's being said. I think, and I understand there is an argument for targeted advertisement, right? But one thing to consider also is, from an ethical point of view, is there a discussion we want to have there? For example, a couple of years ago, a video editor wrote a piece in the Washington Post that you might have said that was titled, "Dear tech companies, I don't want to see pregnancy ads after my child was stillborn," right? And she was going through this, and I understand this is a hard example, but she was going through the effects of have been targeted by social media for baby products and services throughout her pregnancy. Also because of the way she was engaging with social media, right? And probably finding products that were useful for her, but explaining how after the pregnancy and the unfortunate event of not having her baby survive, she was still receiving targeting ads, assuming that her baby was growing and healthy, right? And this was causing a lot of issues in terms of mental health. And this is a question, right? How do we deal with this type of consequences that are unintended? And usually it's automatic, it's easy that you are targeted by different types of advertisement. It's much harder if you don't want to, right? There is either turn everything off and then receive things that are completely away from interest, or hard to then get out of situations like this one. And then I think it's also worth putting on the table a more general consideration and question around the challenges regarding privacy, individual privacy, right? Which is largely discussed in the public debate. And there is no categorical answer to this. It's not a yes, we want to preserve individual privacy versus no, we don't. It's more of a question, to what extent do we consider that this is a fair transaction, right? The fact that I'm providing my data in exchange of having access to free services, is it something that I'm fully aware of, fully transparent on? And would I prefer, for example, to pay for Google Maps or for Facebook instead of using it for free in exchange of my data? So I think those are some of the questions that arise from this type of use, that is exploiting our personal data as a means to generate value for private companies.
Thank you. Nir, would you like to continue with your knowledge of technologies or the engineering side of things at all?
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I think a lot of things here. I think two of the main problems here in the current way of monetizing the data from consumer is that advertisers are losing a lot of money. And the last time I checked, little old data in 2018, advertisers lost about 19 billion with B, 19 billion US dollar in different types of ad frauds online. And at the same time, the social media companies like Facebook are making a lot of money. And the figure I gave was a kind of $62 per user in US and Canada in 2016. So one solution that these advertisers are coming up with is using blockchain. And actually, the Interactive Advertising Bureau, which is a trade group, which has more than 650 media companies and technology companies, and they formed a blockchain working group in, I think, a few years back. And so actually using blockchain-based model, one advertiser reported that it saved $1 million just switching the model to the blockchain-based model and advertising. The way that it is working currently, it is not very popular. I think not many companies are using that, but the way it is working is that advertiser will deliver ad to a consumer, and that is called impression, delivering on the user screen. And there is all the data available, information about click and information about the audience, and all of the data is stored in blockchain. And so basically the blockchain gives all the information, including the delivery status, who saw the information, and then the data is shared among all the participants who are participating in that model. And also the data is encrypted and broadcast to each participant, and there is the permanent ledger, and anyone can see that data anytime, and anyone can audit that data, and anyone can verify that data. And contrary to the current model, which is kind of opaque model, and if you talk with Google or Facebook, which make a lot of money kind of using advertising, but they do not really tell a lot of detail. There is no third party to verify that, and whatever they say, Google or Facebook say, you have to take their words for it. And so this is the model that is kind of becoming more and more popular in the future using blockchain, and also possibility that consumers will be paid. Actually, if I provide my information, more detailed information, I'll be paid. Like if I provide only my name and what am I doing right now and where I'm living, I might be paid less. But if I provide more detailed information, so if I'm going to a bookstore and then if I'm telling them that I'm coming back from my work, and after that bookstore, I'll go to Starbucks to have my coffee. So the more detailed information, and also I allow my Google Map to kind of give permission for Google Map to verify my data. I give permission to the telecommunications company to verify that I'm the owner of that phone. So the more detailed information I give, the more money I'll be paid. And so everything will be transparent in the blockchain model, and started by more than 650 media and technology companies. And so that may be the future of this advertising, and kind of making sure that consumers get rewarded for their data. Thank you.
Thank you, Nir. So I understand you're saying that the blockchain could be used for more transparency and having this full attribution from when you click on something to be able to see all of the steps, all of the actors in between who are leading to that recommendation being made to you, or that purchase price, or anything that influenced your end, what was shown in front of you. That sounds like a very interesting model. I would just like to add a couple of things that I feel belong in this section of the discussion, which is two aspects of the technologies. And these are I think, highly relevant to a later part of our discussion, which is the third-party cookies. So it's not just when you're one of these big tech companies that you're giving away your data. It's actually everywhere, and it's everything you do. Pages have metadata with certain keywords associated with them, and this is all being kind of stored away in your digital file, and that's fine as long as you're as long as that file stays with the web provider or the website owner that you've been looking at. The thing that happens is the aggregation of all of those files across all of those sites that you visit is now building up a very big dossier on you, and that dossier is also being complemented by your use of apps on your phone. And so a couple of relevant points I think to mention at this point are that the Apple Safari web browser since last year has been blocking those third-party cookies that see what you do online. Google has announced similar plans to come into effect later this year. We also know that Apple has now made it explicit opt-in for third-party apps on your phone, that you have to say, I want to allow this app to track this, this, and this about me, and share that with other people who are building up dossiers on you. And Android 12, as I mentioned in the introduction, is is doing a similar thing, or at least adding more privacy visibility and privacy preserving features in. So this is possibly going to change the dynamics. These fundamental underlying technologies that are allowing this cross-site or cross-experience or cross-temporal let's say information gathering from the consumer from being aggregated. So let's come back to that possibly later in the when we talk about what's being done about this. So now I'd like to talk about the consequences of some of these technologies and the discussion we've had so far. And I think perhaps we will start with Julie in this case, because I know that this is an area that she's very strong on.
Sure, thank you, Tom. So actually building from what you just said, I think it's interesting to start by looking at the macro perspective of what this system means at the level of our society, right? And there are scholars such as Shoshana Zuboff that describe the emergence of this new form of capitalism as a type that she calls surveillance capitalism, right? Which is exactly what you mentioned, centered around the commodification of our personal data. And this goes beyond big tech, like you were just saying. However, I do want to point out that when we say big tech, we are talking about the biggest and richest companies on earth, right? That are by far the very richest and that have grown at an unprecedented rate, leaving even banks behind. So Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, Google, and Facebook. And I say this because the power that they have is also unprecedented. And this is important to consider. You may have seen earlier this year that Facebook was standing up against the government of Australia. So Australia was passing a legislation to require for big tech, Facebook, Google, to pay for news that was shared on their platforms. And of course, this is not something that pleases them. And as a response, Facebook decided to ban the channels and the news channels from their own platform. And we know, and Nir mentioned this early on, right? Half of users on social media use it to get access to news. So this is the type of power that a company such as Facebook has accumulated today. And that has important consequences in terms of how we as citizens access information, but also the fact that it is able to wrestle with a country that is, by the way, the 13th economy in the world, so a big country, is a good example of how much power they've accumulated, right? And the question here I want to raise is, what are the risks that are associated with the fact that they have so much power and that their activity enters areas that are usually subject to public regulations like media and news? So there is strict regulation to which media companies are subjected, right? And tech companies escape from that because they strategically position themselves as not being media companies. And a good example that crystallizes, embodies those challenges is the problems and the issues we face today regarding misinformation. And we know that the functions, the forms of mainstream social media, they are designed to deliver their main goals, which is profits, and that's not a judgment, it's just a fact, right? So that translates into, for example, prioritizing immediacy, having algorithms that are going to look to optimize user engagement KPIs, such as number of clicks, screen times. It translates into what we know as filter bubbles and echo chamber effects. All of that being sustained by a gamification logic, which is actually borrowed from the logic of casinos and slot machines. So it's very purposeful design. And this logic have favored, as we've seen, a superficial consumption of information. They have paved the way to the spread of misinformation, even conspiracy theories, even anti-scientific theories that have regained relevance. And there are many examples we could give about the magnitude of these consequences. We all know about COVID-related misinformation, which has very real impact on whether people choose to isolate, to wear masks, to even get a vaccine. But I also want to mention how a handful of far-right characters and movements are very smartly leveraging those platforms to help them gain access to power, right? And there are scholars such as Giuliano D'Empoli that calls and studies those nationalist, populist, tech-savvy leaders that he calls chaos engineers. and shows how Movimento 5 Stelle in Italy, Viktor Orban in Hungary, Trump in the US, Bolsonaro in Brazil have leverages the algorithms in those platforms to spread disinformation and create a powerful narrative that has contributed to polarizing public opinion, ultimately has helped brought them to power. And of course, I'm not saying that the platforms are the sole instrument and trying to pin them as the only responsibles for that, right? But they do provide a space where the simplistic rhetoric can be amplified. And I think this is an important word to consider when we're talking about misinformation today, is that it is being amplified at rates that we have never experienced in history. And it has led to very punctual events, for example, the invasion of the Capitol in Washington, D.C., which has been strongly correlated to it, right? So I think here, and I'm going to stop here because I don't want to speak for too long, but the bottom line is that these platforms are playing an important role in mediating our individual and citizen relation with the public sphere and with politics even.
Thank you, Julie. I know that Anna, when I spoke with her recently, also mentioned the example of misinformation about vaccines in COVID. Maybe you'd like to take the microphone next, Anna.
Yeah, I also want to say something else. Like, it's not just with now with social media. I think that it was something similar is happening with every new technology, and it takes some time until people learn more about it and start, thinking differently and grow their critical thinking. So, for example, when we look at the history of journalism and we remember when the first radio drama was aired, people did not know that it was a radio drama. They thought that it was like really, like the things are happening that hosts were talking in the radio, and it became like very chaotic because they didn't understand that it's a radio drama. So I think that that it takes some time till people learn that. And regarding social media today, it is a very big problem that people are, and it's, yeah, I was talking about Serbia before, and like the people here, a lot of people are not educated, so it's easier to kind of spread fake news when people do not have the critical thinking and are not well educated. But this actually, the COVID thing is happening in other countries as well, and it's interesting, and it's both interesting, funny, and not so funny. But I was going through Twitter for a while, and then because there is that fake news that we get that chip that they are following us and tracking us with the COVID shots, and then of course how Bill Gates is behind all of that. And now that Bill and Melinda are getting divorced, people are joking here in Serbia on Twitter. They're like, how are they going to split all the chipped people, and can I go to the Bill's group and so on? So it's funny, but it's not funny for those who really believe the fake news. So that is a very big issue, and I think that's also the responsibility lies in both areas. So the responsibility is with the platforms and with the technology and with the companies who are using the technology, because they should be transparent and they should tell us like where they are getting the data from and how they're using it, what for, because they should. And I think that it's good to use them for good cause and to really give us the best experience that we as consumers can have. But on the other hand, the responsibility is also within the people and within the educational systems and within the both formal and non-formal education and media to actually educate people and to learn them the critical thinking. I've had the experience of studying both in Serbia and for a while in the US. And I like see the differences, and I really think that like focusing on critical thinking and learning from many sources and reading about that is crucial from the consumer's perspective and from our side as well.
Thank you, Anna. Well, you just mentioned other countries' approaches. This might be the time for Jelena to say a word or two about her experiences in Russia, or possibly about filter bubbles, if that's another topic you'd like to cover.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Russia or filter bubbles. Bubbles where people are seeing the same content about the same topics because
At first, I'm very happy that Nir actually shared his vision about using blockchain in a way of sharing information, and that's maybe the very important thing for this panel, because the name is "Can we now go back?" I would like to say that it's not about going back, it's about going further, and that's actually what is going to happen, monetizing information and using blockchain for that purpose. If we go back actually in the history, we will see that fake news is not something new. As I mentioned at the beginning, the present is based on fake news. How? Because the military actually is based on fake news. And that is the most powerful weapon if you want to take advantage. When you join the army, the first thing that they will learn to teach you is how to use data, even the correct one, and manipulate with them to make an information to create actually the fake news. Because as Anna also mentioned, and Julia is telling the same, we are living in a period where people are not aware of data, of information, what is conclusion, what is assumption. And actually, if you want to win and to take advantage, you can use actually everything that is there. So social media are just the channels that you can spread the word in a way you want to. My experience in Russia is that actually I heard the story about the military and the army actually there, and then I investigated and I realized that everywhere is the same. So yeah, we are based on fake news, but we have to achieve more and to learn more and to ask ourselves when we receive some information, is it true or not? What is the source of it? And we need to educate new generation to think, and critical thinking, yes, as Anna mentioned. And regarding interest bubbles, that's something that is very important for the future and the development of ourselves and the earth. Because if everything is based on interest on the internet and those AI systems and data are working in that way, it means that you, me, everyone actually see just those information that are in relation with our interests. So it means that we are living in a bubble, which means that we actually miss all those important information that are out there. It means that we are becoming a kind of a stupid nations, because you don't receive everything that you need to know. So there is an aspect of using media with a wrong purpose. There should be some, ethical part. Learn people, educate them, give them even more than they're interested in. So that's from my side.
Say anything about use of data in China based on some of the research that you've done in the past, or perhaps contribute to the discussion in another way?
I think about China, actually, things are kind of tricky, and they have privacy law, and they changed in 2012, but still in China, you have right to privacy, but at the same time, the government has unlimited power to have access to your data, and so that is one major difference. But I think about misinformation, probably I would like to add a few points. So there are some activists kind of taking action against all the misinformation going on in the social media, and there is one group, Youth Against Misinformation, and regarding COVID-19 related misinformation, actually all these companies, the social media companies, have their standards very low, number one. Even the lowest standards, they do not follow, number two. And actually the Youth Against Misinformation identified 619 posts in social media, mainly Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And then actually those items posted on their websites did not meet their own standards. And the action taken is for more than 90% of the post, the kind of misinformation post, they did not take any action. Actually, out of 649, only 41 were removed, 13 were taken down, and 7 were flagged. That means more than 90%, although the Youth Against Misinformation reported that they do not meet the platform's own standard, they don't do anything because it is simple. The reason is they do not match information to you and me based on the level of accuracy, and they match based on likability. And they know that you like something, they know that they know that I like something, and they will deliver exactly the thing to me. And so basically they can do pretty much all the things to monetize the data. That is about misinformation. And so just about China, there is really not much to add, except for the fact that just like here in the US, consumers are concerned, but the government has unlimited power, which is a little bit different thing compared to most other countries in the world. Thank you, Tom. I'll just stop here.
Okay, thank you. So I'm aware we just have about 9 minutes left, so that doesn't give us a huge amount of time to talk about how we get back from this, or how, to use Yelena's words, we move forward. So I would just maybe bundle the last 3 questions into one. So this is, what is the industry doing? So the high-tech industry and the advertising industry. What are consumers doing about it, and what are lawmakers doing? And I would invite each of the speakers to, just give maybe a 1 to 2 minute statement on any aspect of those that they feel relevant. And I missed out a very important thing here, which is also, so I mentioned industry, governments, lawmakers, and consumers. But what I also missed out was non-governmental organizations, such as the one that Julie has told us about already. So let's perhaps just go in reverse from the last one and start with you, Nir. Just a quick 1 to 2 minute statement, if you would be kind enough.
So basically, I'll just look from the consumer side, and consumers, internet users are becoming more and more educated. Not everyone, but I think the awareness level is increasing. One example is the California Privacy Rights Act, which is more kind of stronger than the original CCPA kind of enacted years back, and that had 56% support in California. That is really strict. Again, I mentioned earlier, right to correct or inaccurate information, data minimization, purpose limitation, right to kind of receive notice if they are using your sensitive information to make money, and all that. And also, I have a few surveys conducted by companies like Ping Identity and Gemalto and PwC and this another company, Morphisec. And so all of these have found that consumers, a lot of consumers ranging from kind of 70 to 90% consumers were telling in the survey that they will not do business with any company anymore if they do not take their data privacy and security practices more seriously. So there is increasing level of awareness among consumers, and kind of that is a positive thing. I'll just stop here. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Let's go with Yelena next.
So at the end, I will say what I said already, that I'm a fan of targeted advertisement. And I also would like to mention as a conclusion that what we can do is, as a companies, to educate our employees not to create fake news accidentally, because what we should be aware of is that fake news are not the result of something that's created on purpose, not always. So yeah, there is sometimes the case, but lots of fake news are created accidentally because people do not know how to use properly the data that are available. So the main thing is educate the people in companies, and also educate the people who are using actually the internet, not just the social media, but the internet as well. We are lazy people. I'm sure that we are not reading, and you are not reading the legal and the privacy policies. You're just clicking right, okay, or just close. So yeah, sometimes you really need to read something and to learn something. I hope that everyone enjoyed this session, and it was really great experience. At least I'm happy to be the part of this team.
Thank you, Jelena. Now, I know that Anna has some sympathy with your positive feeling towards targeted advertising. So I'll turn it over to her next.
Yeah, well, I would like to mention there's a Harvard Business Review article that I recently read, and it's actually about this topic. And they are kind of giving 5 suggestions that companies can do when doing their targeting and how they should like be more transparent. So one thing that they're suggesting is to stay away from sensitive information. And as I think Yuli mentioned about the pregnancy, showing pregnancy ads to people who lost their babies. So like not to target people based on their health condition, sexual orientation, and anything that can be sensitive. Second one is to show at least a minimum amount of transparency and let them know where you get those information, or if you're collecting information, let them know that you're collecting and what you're collecting, which I believe is already, almost everyone is doing it, letting you know about the cookies and GDPR, whatever is required for that. Also to use the data judiciously, to justify your data collection and to use it really for good, meaning that like it's going to be useful for the consumer, not only for the company. And to, of course, use other ways of collecting data about your target group, because you don't have to use the digital technology and you don't have to use platforms. You should get to know your consumers and your target group on other ways as well. And for example, it's good always to maybe ask them like what kind of things you prefer. And so when people reply to you and they answer questions, so I like to see ads about this topic, or I prefer to get this kind of information, then when they started seeing it, they will know that like you asked them for that data, you didn't just collect it from somewhere from behind. So it gives you more trust, it builds more trust.
Perfect, thank you. And I think the final words will go to Julie now. How can we go back or move forward?
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so thinking about how we can move forward, there's currently a lot of movement about the topic of content moderation, right? And this has implications for different stakeholders. So from the side of the companies, making their guidelines more transparent, the question of consistency. They have taken a stance, for example, against Donald Trump after the Capitol, but this is one case in the US, and thinking through whether this is going to become a policy or not. So there is a lot of discussions going around this topic of content moderation. And from the lawmakers' perspective, it's a question of revising this assumption that tech companies are not media companies, and therefore tech companies are not at all responsible for what is published on their platforms, right? Today, they have no legal liability. Is this the way we want to move forward or not? So this is a question that lawmakers now need to consider and discuss. And then just to mention a couple, for example, initiatives from the civil society side. Sleeping Giants is an organization that has been working on defunding misinformation. So the way they do it is that they go on websites that are promoting misinformation, and they show companies that are advertising on those websites that their advertisement is on that website that is promoting misinformation, right? And calling for companies to block it from Google Ads or whatever service they use. So this has been a really interesting experiment, and they've had concrete results so far. And this is interesting to think about, right? This idea of defunding misinformation. And yes, I think, and I know I've been pointing to the dark side of social media, and I think there are elements we need to salvage, and we can salvage. It has, of course, transformed the way we live today, and we cannot ignore that. And the question is not going back, and it's not intrinsically bad, but can we leverage those elements that work well towards building a better model, right? And this is what we're trying to do with Eureka, the project that I mentioned initially, and I'm happy to have further conversations about it if anyone's interested. So I'll stop here because I think we reached the mark of 50.
Perfect. Well, with that positive note on how we might move forward, I would like to first of all, think of all of our panelists for stimulating conversation, as well as for the preparation that they put in and for sharing their expertise with us today. I'd also like to thank the audience for participating, and wherever you are in the world, I would just like to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom, a lot for this discussion. We heard a lot of very, very interesting things. And I'm just starting to think about it really. And it needs a bit of time to cool down, so to say. I know that I have, when they say just Google it, for example, now it started to be an impossible task to Google things. Like for my dad that is pretty old now, so telling him to Google something means that he's going to get a virus on his computer. So this is an equivalent sentence. Googling something means getting a virus. So it's the same, because basically it became almost impossible to find information that are not fake. So sometimes, depending on what you're looking for. So yeah, the education is definitely needed, and we need some modes of moderation, etc. And hopefully, the humanity always finds a way. So I think we and the consumer technology world is going to find a way to move forward. And I agree fully that we cannot go back. That is not a purpose of us as a species. So thanks again to all the panelists. Thanks again for all the audience on Zoom. Thanks to the people watching us live from the Rectorate in Novi Sad. And also, I would like to invite you to visit us from tomorrow, 8:30. We have a very interesting program tomorrow. More interesting speakers, keynote speeches, panels, and paper presentations of Zing 2021 and ECBS 2021 running in parallel. So if you happen to be in Novi Sad, please also feel free to visit the Rectorate in Novi Sad, because this is not so crowded. Still, people are pretty afraid of the virus, the real one this time, I guess. We don't have that much audience here in the hybrid mode, but at the very least, we figured out how to run a hybrid conference. So this is a very good thing. So thank you again. I would wish all the best to the panelists, and for all of you, see you tomorrow at 8:30. Thanks.